Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on demand care for common ailments such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org.
Happy holidays, Boise State Public Radio listeners. Murphy Woodhouse here, your Mountain West News Bureau reporter. Beyond the wonderful local and state coverage that your support enables, you also make possible the regional work of me and my Bureau colleagues. These are tough times for public media, and I know many feel compelled to do what they can to help us through. If that's you, please take a moment to show your financial support at boisestatepublicradio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. More Idaho Matters right now. Singer and songwriter Carole King changed the sound of American music and inspired generations with her timeless hit. But her own story is just as remarkable. In a compelling new biography, Carole King, She Made the Earth Move, acclaimed author and journalist Jane Eisner takes readers behind the music, exploring King's trailblazing career, her personal struggles, and her lasting cultural impact. And we're lucky enough to have Jane join us now to talk more about this newest book. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Gemma. It's lovely to be here.
So, Jane, what inspired you to write a biography about Carole King?
Well, I've been a fan since Tapestry was released in 1971. I followed her career. I collected her music. I went to a concert, saw the play Beautiful on Broadway. And so when the opportunity came for me to write this biography for Yale University Press as part of the Jewish Live series, I was so delighted. I really learned a lot and had a great time doing this.
So my understanding is that you actually studied piano as part of your research for this biography. Why did you do that, and what did you learn?
Well, I really wanted to understand her music from the inside out. She initially was only a composer. Someone else, mostly Jerry Goffin, her first husband, wrote the lyrics. And even when she wrote both lyrics and music for her songs, I just wanted to understand what was special about them. And I had a book of Carole King music. I sat down to play it. I realized I couldn't anymore. I studied piano many years ago. And so I went to a piano teacher who really helped me not just play the songs, but understand what was beneath them. And I think what I learned most was how complex her music is. You know, it sounds kind of poppy sometimes, and the lyrics stay with you, but what at least I didn't realize until I tried to play it was there was a lot of stuff happening with chords, the interplay between left hand and right hand, if you will. And that was really important for me to learn so that I could tell about it to readers.
I think, too, you really give a quite vivid sense of the setting and the environment of Carole King's childhood. How do you think that contributed to her success?
Well, she was part of a neighborhood in Brooklyn, Sheepshead Gravesend neighborhood, that was filled with people like her. Working class folks, children and grandchildren of immigrants. Her father was a firefighter. Her mother was a part-time piano teacher to start out with. Public schools were really good, uh, and she learned a lot there, but also developed her role as a musician there and got a great deal of support for that. So I think in a lot of ways she um, sort of mirrored the ambition that people like her grandparents had to make it in America. And she was surrounded by other people who, while they may not have had her actual talent and genius, also had this striving way of living in the world and wanting to better themselves.
Mm. You mentioned you really started paying attention and liking Carole King when Tapestry came out. It still is one of the best-selling records of all times. It seems her
Yes.
music and her songs really transcend generations. So, what do you think gives her music such an enduring appeal?
Well, as said before, I do think that there's a complexity to her music that really amplifies the songs. And then the songs themselves, they express heartbreak and longing and love and family and aspirations. And I think they're so human. And she sings them in this really authentic style that does seem timeless. And you hear them and you say, oh, yeah, this is me, or this is my
Mm.
friend, or this is what I hope for, or this helps me if I've just gone through a bad breakup, or whatever. And I think that is what contributes to the fact that generations after generations really like her music.
How did you figure out how she navigated the male-dominated music industry that was the 1960s and 70s? And is there anything that artists today can really learn from what she had to endure and her own journey?
Well, I think what she was about was the work. Yes, she was a breakthrough performer and a composer. She often was the only woman in the studio when they were recording. Um, and certainly she had to prove herself over and over again in a way that men didn't at that time. But you don't hear her kind of waving a flag about that. I think she just tried to do it. And the struggle was internal, and I don't think it um it was visible except for what you hear in some of her music. Like you think of the song So Far Away, and that was written when she was on the road and missed her family.
Mm.
She has another line that I love in a song. She says, I have a baby in one hand and a pen in the other. So that was her lifelong struggle, to try to manage both her family life. She had four children and the demands of the road and the demands of success. And in the end, for a long time, as you know, she lived in Idaho, and that
Mhm.
was her response, I think, to the demands of fame.
Beyond music, what kind of impact, in your opinion, has Carole King had on social, maybe even political movements?
Well, I'm not sure she's had a huge impact on them, but they certainly have been important to her life. Um, Her politics began with really caring about the environment, and particularly the Rockies in Idaho and neighboring states. That's what led her to initially support Gary Hart for his presidential bid, although that was not successful. And to this day, she works with members of Congress to try to protect that area. Um, I think she's also been involved in Democratic politics. You saw her supporting Barack Obama, uh, Joe Biden, and other candidates like that.
Before I let you go, you have spent so much time with her story. I'm wondering how your own view of Carole King has evolved over the writing of this book and the researching of it.
Well, I'm a journalist first, so I wasn't going to write a fangirl book.
Yeah.
This is not a necessarily glowing portrait of every part of her life. Um, and I wanted to show the complexity of her character and her story. And so that led me down some paths that I wasn't quite expecting. But that's really important. I think readers know that human beings have flaws and have struggles and have, in her case, enormous success and impact musically. Um, But, there are also some things that maybe point to things that in her life were mystifying, were kind of strange. And that's part of her story. And I hope that's why the book will be relatable, because we all have flaws and struggles. What we don't have is her musical genius.
Mm. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time to speak with us. We've been talking with author and journalist Jane Eisner about her new book. It's a biography called Carole King, She Made the Earth Move. You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudette.
Looking for another podcast to listen to? Check out The Nature of Idaho from our partner station KISU in Eastern Idaho. Join hosts Peter Pruitt and Dr. Leif Tapanilla as they share fascinating stories from the Gem State's great outdoors, celebrating Idaho's wildlife, landscape, and natural wonders. That's The Nature of Idaho from KISU. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.